Could somebody contact past me and ask her to put all of these in publication order? And welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be talking about illicit things, forbidden things, things that we shouldn't be looking at. That's right, in this video we are going to be talking about upcoming releases for the next few months. When I say the next few months, I mean the next like 8 months, because I have some books that are due in distant 2025. I mean, long may 2025 the year stay in the future, but it would be nice if it did us a solid and sent the books back to us now. And the reason that I say that these things are illicit is because here on this channel we, and by we I mean me and everybody else who has made their own version of my 2024 bingo board from hell, have joined me on my journey to try and read 60% of the books that I buy in 2024. And yeah, girl, she's doing not bad at it, but the book buying is still a problem, still an intangible problem. The thing that just happens without me having to think about it very much. So, with that in mind, let's talk about all of the things that I'm excited are coming out. Because the 60% of it all is not going to stop me. We're just going to have to work smarter and also harder. So first up, I'm going to talk to you guys about the books that I have actually physically pre-ordered. Because although I am excited for a bunch of these books to come out, I have changed the way that I buy books in 2023 and 2024. Previously, as soon as I spotted a book that I was interested in, I would immediately pre-order that sucker. And then throughout the year, there would just be these books appearing on my doorstep, most of which I would then get really excited for again, but some of which I had already read bad reviews about, had proofs from the publisher or sampled in other ways and didn't like them, and then suddenly they were just in my house. And also there are always books that on initial inspection sound amazing, but after the sort of like new shiny urge wears off, there's that moment where you're like, well, but am I actually going to read this, and if so, when? And sometimes the answer ends up being no. So I have massively cut back on my pre-orders, and in fact, out of the books that have made their way into my house by this point in 2024, only 9 of those have been pre-orders. So I'll start off just really quickly by running through sequels, because I can't really tell you much about those books anyway, owing to, you know, spoilers. So the first one is another Percy Jackson book. It is Wrath of the Triple Goddess, and it comes out on like the 24th of September, I think. Oh, and obviously before we truly get into this video, of course all of these publishing dates can change and probably have changed since they were announced. So don't take any of these dates as gospel, but just as like a good ballpark. Anyway, I have a cheek to be anticipating this one because I have not yet actually read the first of the new Percy Jackson books, and in fact started a reread of Percy Jackson in March, which I have not continued with. Is my new toxic personality trait just rereading series instead of reading the last book in them? Maybe. Either way, I am very excited for this one to come out, and the Waterstones edition of this has an absolutely stunning sprayed edge. Next up, we have book 4 of the Green Creek saga. This is Brother Song. This is the final book in the series by TJ Klune. These books are paranormal queer romance. They are a werewolf romance specifically. These are actually backlist books of TJ Klune's that are being published fresh with new covers, so they do have like slightly outdated, I would say, attitudes to a few things. But so far, as of book 2 in the series, I've had an okay time. Oh, so this one is scheduled to come out on the 1st of August. Then there is, of course, Lore Olympus Volume 7. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, in which everything has been modernised. Persephone is a young nymph at university, and Hades is running a corporate underworld. It is one of the only romance series that I have ever actually genuinely had that like sits and kicks her little feet at feeling. But that being said, I do tend to have a sort of rolling attitude with these volumes. Volumes seem to follow a pattern for me of amazing 3 stars, amazing 3 stars. So we will have to wait and see where volume 7 falls when it comes out on the 1st of October. And then finally for sequels, we have another TJ Klune. This is Somewhere Beyond the Sea, and of course it is the follow-up to The House on the Cerulean Sea. This is coming out on the 10th of September, and I really don't feel like I need to tell you anything else about about it because everybody and their queer uncle is desperate to get their hands on this book. Okay, so next, for my pre-orders that are not sequels, for the pre-orders that I can actually tell you more about. The first of these comes out on the 15th of August and it is Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. Freaking love the cover of this one. If I could chew it, I would. Maureen Johnson is of course the author of the Truly Devious books, a YA mystery series which I am dearly devoted to. So this one is about Marlowe. She is house sitting when, very unfortunately, a massive fire happens at the house that she is in. But the results of this for Marlowe is that everybody in town is then suspicious of her. Everybody thinks that she has set this fire on purpose, including the girl that she has been in love with for years and years, who now no longer wants anything to do with her and does not want to be seen with her in public. But with her entire life derailed, she has a whole summer in front of her in which she needs a job. And as house sitting is not exactly going the way that she thought it was going to go, she decides to apply for a job at Morning House, which is an old 1920s manor that was built on an island. However, unsurprisingly, when Marlowe gets there, Morning House is not quite what it seems. And as Maureen Johnson is absolutely obsessed with a creepy house, can relate, girl. Horrific things start happening that draw Marlowe in. Honestly, August is just, it's too far away for this book. Ah, crap. To the batteries! Seriously, we have a lot of books to talk about. We need all the batteries we can get. But the next book that I am absolutely titillated over is Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. Of course, M.L. Rio is the author of We Were Villains, and it has been a long time since they brought out anything else. So this one is about 5 people who all use the same pathways at the same time every night. Wait, let me read to you the list of people. So we've got a bartender, a rideshare driver, a hotel receptionist, the steward of the derelict church that looms over them, and an editor-in-chief of a college paper always in search of a new story. So at the same time every night they just happen to be using these same pathways, and they usually bump into each other, cross paths on their way home or to work, etc. And this particular night, when they all come together, they are all kind of mesmerised by a really strange hole that has been dug. It looks like a grave, but it is not in a place where any grave should actually be. So they're all kind of like, well, it is a graveyard, but do we do something about this? When the person who dug the grave starts to come back. And then they all end up tailing him through the cemetery. And as they do, they discover that he might be connected to a lot of strange things that have been happening in the town, which have of course been covered by the college paper. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned, but this one is coming out on the 24th of August. And then finally, out of the books that I have actually pre-ordered, we have one that comes out in January of 2025, and that is Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. The proofs of this have literally just kind of made their way out into the world, and that is how I first heard about this book. So I'm gonna see if I can get my hands on it before 2025 because it sounds exactly up my street. And once again, it is like a dire, depressing cover that has like these fluorescent colours on it. I'm seeing a trend and I'm enjoying it. So the synopsis of this one absolutely grabbed me in the first couple of lines. It looks like it's got 1 foot in thriller and 1 foot in literary fiction, because the first couple of lines of this say that the main character one day just literally grabs everything off of her washing line, throws it in the back of her car, straps in her 2 daughters and drives. She doesn't just leave her street or her town, she leaves her country. The place that she finds herself in, an extremely down and out council estate, is almost as difficult to live in as the place that she left, under the circumstances of like impending daily threat. However, that daily threat doesn't stop just because there are many miles between them, and our main character's partner continues a relentless campaign to get her back. You guys know that earlier this year I read a couple of really interesting like true crime books about the idea of coercive control and the timeline of that, and how we can follow the acts of coercive control through to the acts of like domestic abuse and murder. And this book looks like it's also looking deeply into that, and I'm very excited for it. Okay, so that is the end of my pre-order list, and again that list is books that I was excited enough for that I had to pre-order, or books from authors that I have previous experience of having a good time with. But now it's time to buckle up, my friends, because I have got an extensive list for you of books that I am very interested in, and although none of them have hit my pre-order list yet, that doesn't mean that they won't. Coming out on the 4th of June, we have got Follow Her Down by Victoria Helen Stone. Victoria Helen Stone is also the author of Jane Doe, a book that I absolutely adore. So Follow Her Down is about Elise. Her sister was murdered years ago and it completely ripped her family apart. It left her mother anxious and housebound, and it left her brother Kyle completely paranoid about everything and everybody. And Elise herself didn't exactly cope with it well, and she wasted quite a few years on just trying to drown it out. Now, years and years later, Elise has got herself together and she is moving on in her life. She has bought a lodge. She's trying to go about her days with purpose, but everybody else in her life refuses to let her sister's murder go. And then Elise's ex turns up dead. And you guessed it, he was found dead in the same forest as Elise's sister, which prompts her to pick up the investigation all over again. So yes, this one is quite high at the top of my list. Next up, also coming out on the 4th of June, we have got What a Bad Influence. I have had very good luck recently with thrillers that have the whole like influencer lifestyle at the centre of them. This one is about Hazel. She grew up in a YouTuber family. They were kids who were put on the internet very, very early. And while Hazel absolutely reviles the lifestyle and has stayed as far out of the public eye as possible, her sister, on the other hand, has very much capitalised on that early success and is now like a huge influencer. But as far as Hazel is concerned, she has nobody real in her life. Then one day her sister goes missing, and Hazel is sure that everything that she has ever thought has been correct, that she should have protected her sister better. But now Hazel is forced to go on essentially an Easter egg hunt through the internet to try and find out what happened to her sister. So it sounds like this one is also told in multimedia format. It sounds like there are like Reddit posts and emails and like Twitter threads. Next up, coming up on the 18th of June, we have got The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. Lucy Foley is one of those authors who I have consistently gone, oh, I should probably try something from her at some point. I have to say though, this one, more than any of her other books, has a premise in it that I'm like, yeah. So this book is set in the Manor. It is a beautiful sprawling country house which has been reopened as like an elite venue, and there are a lot of people there for the opening, a lot of very important people, a lot of very influential people and celebrities. However, 36 hours after the opening of the manor, the police are called, there has been a fire, a body has been found, and pretty much any of the guests who were at that midnight feast are acting strangely, which is when the police start to hear all of the local chatter about exactly what things live in the woods, what things that the people who own the manor have upset and offended with their renovation works prior to this very elite venue opening. Next up, coming out on the 18th of June, we have We Used to Live Here. This one came onto my radar because Blake Lively is going to be starring in a Netflix adaptation of it, I think this year. Very much hoping that the characters of Charlie and Eve, who are at the centre of this book, are Blake Lively and a girlfriend. Like, that would just make me really, really happy. Charlie and Eve have flipped a big house. They are absolutely in love with it. They are ripping it out and renovating it, and they are living their dream. When one day a man brings his young family to the door, knocks on it and tells Eve, I used to live here, is there any chance that I could like bring my family in and let them have a look around? The description calls Eve a perpetual people pleaser, which I understand, and says that Eve lets them in immediately, but as soon as the family enter the house, strange things start to happen. The youngest child goes missing, just somewhere in the manor house. And over the course of trying to find out what happened to said child, a weird ghostly presence materialises in the basement and things around the house start to go wrong very rapidly. Next up, coming out on the 25th of June, we have Incidents About the House by Josh Malerman. Now, I absolutely loved Bird Box when I read it, but my love for it has kind of depreciated over the years. It's one of those books that I kind of look back on and go, I'm not sure why I loved that so much. And that suggests to me that, you know, it hasn't stuck with me, and it might have been a little bit of the buzz of the time and like the novelty of the format of the book which got me. So I've never ended up picking up anything else from Josh Malerman because nothing else has ever sounded really that interesting. until this, because this one is creepy child horror, and we know that I love a little creepy child. So the little kid in this particular book, Bella, is 8 years old, and she lives in a very comfortable little situation with family members that she loves dearly. However, there is also another presence which lives in Bella's house, and it is called Other Mummy, and it asks her every day, can I come into your heart? Every day Bella says, no, actually you can't, you're creepy. But Bella can tell that the more that she says this, the angrier Other Mummy is getting, and that if she doesn't say yes to her or find a way to get rid of her very, very soon, the rest of her family could potentially suffer as a result. So if the reviews from people who are not Josh Malerman absolute diehards love this one, then I will probably end up picking it up. Next up, coming out on the 16th of July, we have Only One Survives by Hannah Mary McKinnon. This one is a like creepy survival thriller slash horror, and the only reason that it is not on my pre-order list is because it is a band. It's about a band, and we all know that I usually don't like music described to me in books. It just generally bugs me. I don't vibe with it, so I don't tend to like jump for that kind of book. This one is about Vienna Taylor. She is a drummer in a band, and all she has ever wanted to do is just make music. So when she ends up in a band with her best friend as the lead singer, she is living her dream. But as the tour bus goes from one location to another, they have to go through an icy mountain pass, and a blizzard hits and the tour bus careens off the side of the cliff. Some people obviously do not survive the impact, but several of the band do. The only problem is they have no way to tell anybody that they are there, and they are stuck in a survivalist situation because they swiftly discover it is not just the cold that they have to contend with at the bottom of that cliff, and one by one the surviving members of the band start to go missing. Next up, coming out on the 6th of August, we have got a new book from T. Kingfisher. This is A Sorceress Comes to Call. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have very much to say about this book. I will probably end up reading it because it is T. Kingfisher, but I vastly prefer T. Kingfisher's contemporary horrors to any of her fantasy books. Don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed some of them, I really have, but I am really just always looking for that thrill that the twisted ones gave me, and I don't think this one is going to come even vaguely near to that category. The good thing, however, is that Goodreads does list it as 336 pages, so it is actually a full novel as opposed to the novella length things that she's been bringing out recently. So again, we shall see, but it's T. Kingfisher, so there's a good possibility it will end up in my house at some point. Next up, coming out on the 13th of August, we have Glass Houses by Madeline Ashby. This one is one that I'm very excited for because it has the like locked door mystery aspect that I really like, although it's kind of more like a locked island again. But it's not on my pre-order list owing to the fact that it is set a little bit in the future, and it does have sort of like one foot in sci-fi, and it sounds a little bit speculative at that, so I'm gonna have to wait and see with this one, and hopefully maybe like read a preview of it or a sample, or like get it from my library and see what I think. This one is about a group of CEOs who have all gone away to an island retreat to celebrate selling some AI like emotion mapping software. However, once they get to this like beautifully stocked island and they're like chilling out, some things start to happen, like doors in the house don't open, they can't get to some of the things that they need like food and other amenities, and then some weird things start to happen to the people there, who of course all start to fall into mass panic. And the main character of this one, who is the head of their HR department, is like, guys, okay, well, everything's gonna be fine, we're gonna work this out. But it turns out that she might actually have something to do with all of this happening to them in the first place. Another one coming out on the 27th of August is one that I hope is gonna be good, but I'm not really sure about. It's a thriller. It's called Red River Road by Anna Downs. I have never read anything from this author before, but apparently they are an English author who moved to Australia, and this book is set in Australia, which is of course the reason that it came across my desk, the reason that it's on my radar. But just because it's set in Australia doesn't mean it's going to have the tone of the Australian thrillers that I really like. So this one is about a woman who is determined to find her lost sister. Her sister went on a solo van life trip in like the outback of Australia and then just vanished. Her van was found, but she was not. And the only way to like retrace her steps is through her social media and the posts and the things that were sent to her sister. So I'm really hoping again that this one has a little bit of the mixed media aspect in it. I'm not sure if it does. Nothing on the blurb says that it does, but it kind of reads that way. The other thing that has like great appeal to me is that I actually love watching van life videos. I enjoy that section of YouTube a lot. Could literally never be me, but there's something a little bit like romantic about having all of your life in one vehicle and being able to like drive across country at all times if you need to. But I'm keeping an open mind because, you know, it's a sister trying to find her missing sister thriller, and those can really go either way. Next up, on the 10th of September, we have So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This is essentially about two long-time best friends, one of whom is really not looking forward to her birthday, does not want to think about it or celebrate it in any way. And so the two friends rent a cottage alone, just the two of them, to like escape everything which is going wrong in both of their lives, the list of which is substantial. However, the main character here, who wants to avoid her birthday, Sloane, discovers once they get to this cottage that her friend Naomi doesn't just want to like lie about, read books, drink Prosecco or whatever. She wants Sloane to like leave all of her inhibitions in the past, and she's organised a weird and wonderful night out for her to try a bunch of things that she has never tried before, which results in something going wrong and results in vampires. Next up, coming out on the 24th of September, we have Devils Kill Devils by Johnny Compton. Now, Johnny Compton brought out Spite House last year, which was a book that was on my most anticipated list for last year. However, I was of course doing a lot of work on my pre-orders and my book buying stuff at the end of 2023, and it was a book which just never made its way into my house. The premise for Spite House sounded like it was right up my street, but this one is about a character who has lived her entire life believing that she has a guardian angel, an actual person, an entity who she talks to, who looks out for her, who comforts her, who makes sure that she's safe. But then one day that guardian angel decides to kill somebody in her life who she loves, somebody who she didn't think was a problem, who she didn't think was actually hurting her in any way. And then she is forced to confront the idea of this guardian angel, like, is she carrying it around with her? Is it actually there? And I really love this idea in supernatural horror particularly, of like people accidentally letting things in because they think that they're good but they have in fact been fooled. And as a witchy person who do believe in ghosts, I think it's important to be vigilant about those things. So yeah, needless to say, this one has piqued my interest. Next up, coming out on the 24th of September, is a new Jandy Nelson, and I can tell you right now that I'm going to be buying this book. I don't even know why I'm kidding myself by putting this book on this part of the list. This is When the World Tips Over. It is a new contemporary YA. It is about the Fall siblings who live in North Carolina. They have an idyllic life until one day their father goes missing and absolutely rips the family apart. Now, years and years later, the siblings are just trying to muddle through, and oh my goodness, you guys, the description of these kids. I have to read it to you. It says, Dizzy Fall, aged 12, bakes cakes, sees spirits, and wishes she were the heroine of a romance novel. Miles Fall, 17, brainiac, athlete, and dog whisperer, is a raving beauty but also lost and desperate to meet the guy of his dreams. And Winton Fall, 19, who raises the temperature of a room just by entering it, is a virtuoso violinist set on a crash course for fame or self-destruction. It's Jandy Nelson. The cover is absolutely to die for. I will be bringing this book into my house. We have a book that is coming out on the 3rd of November, and it is When We Came to Welcome You by Vincent Tirado, and it is a creepy neighbour story. Again, if you have any at all recommendations for creepy neighbour horror or thrillers, please leave them down in the comments below because I want them. So this one is about Sol, and she is not having a great time in her life. She is working on her PhD at university when a lab incident ends up with an accusation of plagiarism, and she is temporarily banned from the department. On top of that, she is nightly having to visit her elderly and declining father, who is deeply homophobic and who does not hold back at all in telling her what he thinks of her and her wife's lifestyle. Sol can feel herself slowly falling into depression and also slowly falling into a wine habit, which is getting worse and worse per night, family. But her wife is far more optimistic for the future. She says everything is going to be absolutely fine in a gated community that they have been absolutely desperate to get a house in for ages. When they move into said gated community, the neighbours come over to say hi, except the neighbours are, how shall we put it, a little bit over friendly, a little bit over present, and they seem to know an awful lot about their family. This one of course sounds very Stepford Wivesy, but I am so here for it. And then finally I have a bunch of books that are slated for 2025 which don't either have covers or full blurbs yet, but which have for various reasons obviously made it onto this list. First up, I'm just going to come straight out and say it is a sequel. It is Red God. Red God is the final book in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I am very excited for it, but Pierce Brown himself has said this year, like last month or so, that he is like in the middle of writing it, so there's absolutely no way by the time he finishes it, it gets copy edits, it gets sent for like typesetting and the covers get made and all the publicity gets done and stuff, that we are getting it any time before at least the middle of next year. So I'm just gonna have to sit on my hands and wait for that one and be patient. Then there is The Search for My Mother's Murderer by Neil Berryman. Now this one is particularly interesting if you know anything about the true crime case that this one comes from. This case is the murder of Sandra Rivet, although Sandra Rivet's name's probably not one that you are going to be familiar with. You're instead probably going to be familiar with the man who killed her, who is Lord Lucan. Lord Lucan is accused of, because the case has never actually been, you know, like completely solved because he disappeared, killing his housekeeper and nanny, believing that she was instead his wife who looked very similar from behind. However, the woman who was murdered in this case, Sandra Rivet, gave up a baby for adoption, and years after Sandra Rivet's murder, this baby was an adult and his adopted mother was dying and gave him a bunch of papers and said, I want you to have this before I die, and it was information on his birth mother, who of course was the murdered Sandra Rivet. And so Neil Berryman then absolutely threw himself into a campaign, reopen this investigation and find Lord Lucan, etc, etc, and this is a book about that. Then next up we have another novella from M.L. Rio which is called Hot Wax. There is literally no information about this right now, but I don't care, I want it. And then finally there is Murder in Memory by Olivia Waite, which has been picked up by Tor. The description for this one got me because it says a memory called Empire meets Miss Marple in this cosy spaceborne mystery helmed by a no-nonsense formidable auntie of a detective, and realistically I don't need to know anything else, and neither do you, to know that I will be pre-ordering this one when it eventually pops up. I'm really sad that this one is going to be like 2025 before I have my hands on it, but you know, good things come to those who wait and all that. So that is it guys, those are all of the books that are on my radar for the latter half of the year. I will be bringing you another one of these videos before the end of the year with things that are going to come out in like the latter half and the very start of 2025 as we get more like firm dates for things and covers and like better synopses. But that's quite enough to be going on with. I think there were quite a few books mentioned in there. So if you got this far through the video, I want you to do two things for me. First up, I want you to leave me the little island emoji down below for Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson, which is by far the thing that I am the most excited for from this list. And then secondly, I want you to tell me what your most anticipated book is right now. What book are you absolutely steaming is not currently in your hands? What book can you not live without? Please tell me that down below. If you are new here and you want to see how many of these books actually do make it onto my pre-order list, then please hit that subscribe button. And if you are a long-time returning viewer who knows that I'm probably going to be buying a lot of the books off this list and you want to see me crying later about it, then thanks for sticking around, and please hit that thumbs up on the way out because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to you all really soon. Bye! Ooh, am I gonna be poor? Am I gonna be so poor? Can you mix books with ramen? Is my question.